Hey everybody, welcome to the Greg and Joe Turbo Show. I'm your host, Joe, joined here with my co-host, Greg. Hey, Greg.
Hello.
Hey. So first of all, thanks everyone for joining. This is our very first episode in what we hope to be a long-running series. Um, my name is Joe Sforza. I'm a brand technical specialist for Turbonomic and Instana. Been with Turbo for about 2.5 years now, worked on the post-sales side predominantly, and I've recently moved over to the pre-sales side. And as I mentioned, my co-host Greg here. Greg, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Great. Really glad to be here. I'm glad you were willing to come on the show with me and put this together. I'm pretty excited about this series. So, Greg Minicello. I am a delivery consultant here in Expert Labs and IBM. I've been with the Turbonomic platform for about 3 years. Started as a technical account manager, jumped up to a team lead, and now I'm in a delivery consultant role within IBM.
Awesome. Awesome, Greg. So I guess maybe the first thing to answer is sort of, why are we here, right? What are we doing with this podcast? Why did Greg and I decide to set this up?
Yeah, tell us
Uh,
about that, Joe.
yeah, absolutely. So, I think pretty simply, Greg and I work with customers a lot, and what we see is, a lot of unique challenges that we kind of come up against, right? And things that we kind of have to work within and work around with the Turbo platform. Um, so with this podcast, what we're trying to do is kind of do a little deeper dive, I guess, into sort of IT in general,
Yep.
specific challenges that, customers have sort of, and the ways that customers are working to sort of meet those challenges, right? Because ultimately, as I think we'll discover throughout the course of this podcast, regardless of how customers are sort of meeting those challenges today, it's really kind of the same approach. It's essentially trying to cure the symptom and not the cause. Um,
Right.
and so,
And sometimes you don't
hopefully,
even know what the cause is. You'll never get the cause, right? You still just continue to deal with those symptoms, right? Exactly.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so, we're hoping to kind of get a better understanding of sort of the things that they're up against, that folks are up against, as well as a deeper dive into Turbonomic and potentially Instana
That's
in particular, to kind of showcase the functionality there and show how those two platforms in particular are able to sort of meet those challenges and sort of get to that root cause of the problem as opposed to just working towards eliminating the symptoms. But Greg, why don't you let us know sort of what our listeners can sort of expect
yeah.
as we move through these episodes?
So our intent, this is what we set out to do, is to have a regular series. We're going to put together some content for everyone. That content is going to be, as Joe said, topics in the industry we're in. Talk about things that we encounter. Talk about problems that customers have. And Turbonomic may not always be the solution. Most times it's going to be the solution. But it doesn't have to be the solution. And we're not just here to talk about Turbonomic. Instana is going to be a big piece of what we talk about. There might be some other IBM products we bring into the mix. But to keep it small and not boil the ocean, let's start with talking about the things that we know most about. Let's talk about the challenges we have with our customers that we see both from a pre-sales, a post-sales perspective, from product side. We're hoping to get a cross section of individuals, knowledge, perspectives, across all of the different disciplines that we've got to bring this product to market, and to make sure that it's the best that it can be. For example, we want to bring on some product managers. We want to talk about what their perspective is on the challenges, what they believe the solutions are, and why those solutions are what they chose to bring to market. To bring in some people like you, Joe, pre-sales engineers, some account executives, maybe even bring in some regional directors, just to talk about what their perspectives are and what they see in our industry, and how they feel about those things, and what they've done to solve for those challenges, and even what they're hearing, and potentially that could lead into other topics as we learn more from them. And, obviously post sales, I'd love to bring some folks in from the post side. We do a lot of good work here, bring a lot of value to our customers. So it's important that we hear that perspective. Engineering, I'd love to bring an engineer on the call, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
The-
mean, because it would be great too, because obviously IT is constantly evolving, right? And part of the Turbonomic and Instana platform is evolving with those changes, right? Is so we're constantly adding more to sort of meet new challenges or to solve for existing challenges in a better way.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
so that's definitely part of it as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk to folks. I will say, to everyone listening, leave a comment. on this video, if you have ideas, if there are specific topics or unique challenges that maybe you've come across and you'd like to potentially come on and talk about, or you'd like to hear us talk about, we're all ears. Hopefully, this is something that can serve the sort of the greater good for all the IBMers out there to learn more about, not just Turbo and Instana, but to learn more about the industry in general.
Right.
And
Right.
here again, like you said, a lot of unique perspectives on things. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So
I'm
Joe,
really looking forward to it.
you've said the industry, you've said IT. What does it mean? What does that mean to you? The industry we're in. What is IT to you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had I think, a gentleman that used to work here that kind of said, in IT, there's really only one job, right? And that's to assure the application's performance. So I
Yep.
guess in my mind, IT is just a structure that's sort of created with that sort of single-minded focus
Yep.
of assuring that application, right? Because I think we were talking before we started this. I think you had a pretty good sort of way of describing this, right? Like think of a company like Amazon. You have a million people doing a million jobs, but at the end of the day, if me, the consumer, goes on to order something on the app and it doesn't work, then everyone else's job becomes not important,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so, and so to me, IT is really just a mechanism for assuring performance in,
Yeah.
at many different levels, at many different layers. What's your thoughts, Greg? Does that kind of
Well,
resonate with you?
you used my example, so thank you. That was good.
Hey,
Um,
thank you.
yeah. My perspective, you can think of different brick and mortar services or products and services that are out there. For example, you like a karate class, right? IT is not really important to a karate class. You can still deliver that service. You can have people come in and listen and learn. Or for example, you go to Wegmans, like a grocery store, right? If there's no IT, um, they could probably still ring you up. You could probably still figure out how to charge somebody for a bunch of bananas. But for example, like Netflix, right? If Netflix goes down, their product, their service is that consumable content, that application that brings the bits to your eyes, right? If
Right.
that's not there,
What do you
what's
got?
it all for, right? Why if they're not able to offer that product or service, um, the business it doesn't exist.
And more importantly, what am I going to watch this weekend then?
Right. Right.
These are the big questions.
That
These are
that'll be we'll take that on as another podcast episode in the future, I think. But
right. Yeah, yeah,
we certainly have tons of content there that we can come up with.
absolutely.
That's the point I'm trying to make is the application is your product. It is your service. It is your entire business that allows your consumers, the people that are bringing you revenue that you're providing that service for, to give you their money. And if the application isn't running, the IT team isn't keeping the application running, that money isn't coming in. So don't make it so hard for me to give you my money, right? So what sorts of like challenges do you think, Joe, like have you seen? And you don't have to give me them all, but maybe off the top of your head, like what are some of the biggest challenges you see in this industry when we go to these customers and they
Yeah.
talk about their IT shops?
No, man, it's a great question. And to not give too much away
Yep.
for our future episodes, but I'll just say one word: complexity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There's just stack on stack on stack on stack, and everyone is sort of broken into their own silo, have their own scope, have their own data sets,
Yep.
and it's impossible to correlate all those data points in real time, right? I mean,
Yeah. Absolutely.
because nothing lives in isolation, right? If you throw a rock into a pond, there's a ripple. There's something's always going to impact something else
Yep.
upstream or downstream.
Yeah.
How do you account for that, right? And I think those are the sort of questions that we kind of want to uncover here,
Yep.
uh, and the sort of the topics we want to delve into throughout this series. What's your thoughts, Greg? Anything to add to that?
Well, I think the biggest common denominator that we run across, especially in the space we're in at Turbonomic, is over provisioning, right? Over allocation of resources to make sure that you've got enough, right? So, you know, setting a VM size to a specific size, knowing that it's probably too big, but also knowing 100% that it's not too small. And that that's not sustainable. You can't continue to over allocate. You can't continue to make things bigger than they ought to be because there's a very real cost associated with that. Not only just like a monetary cost, but also There could be sort of not a non-functional cost, right? Where maybe not technology, maybe not process, but people cost, right? Like if I've got to maintain all of these things at these high levels, um, maybe I've got to have more people around to maintain that, or I've got to have different procedures and processes actually to run those things up. And there's costs associated with those things. Nothing's free.
Nothing is free. This is true.
Yeah, yep. And most of the time, most especially for like a new application, right? Something that's being launched that's just coming out. You don't really have a good feel for that demand management as an IT team, right? I've got 4 different applications coming in this month. I may have 12 different applications coming in next month. How do I know these things are coming in? How do I know what size they're supposed to be? It's a lot of guessing.
Right.
And until you actually get that thing to production and you get your user base and you build it and you ramp it and you've got a steady state now, you don't know. You don't know how much adoption there's going to be. You don't know how much resources you're going to require to make sure that you're hitting your SLAs and your service level objectives. And never mind hitting those service level objectives, but keeping your user base happy, right?
Right. Right.
Because you know, Joe, users are finicky, right? They want it now.
And no one has ever been fired for spending too much money, but they've certainly been fired for being the guy that broke the application.
That's right. That's right. Production's down.
Right.
It's a resume generating event sometimes.
That's
right.
right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I think it's that fear that sort of permeates when we talk about what is IT and, and what are the challenges. I mean, people are afraid because they don't have a good way to answer the questions that you just kind of outlined. And again, not to give up too much away about what we're going to be talking about in coming episodes, but I think that'll be a big topic and one that we hope to be able to kind of dive into and dig deeper into and kind of uncover sort of potentially how Turbo specifically can help a lot of companies overcome that. So yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward.
Yeah, I want to build on something you said before. You used the word complex, right? And it's becoming more and more complex every day. Think of some of these application platforms that are trying to make the best use of all of the services that are out there, right? And I'll give you an example. I've got an application that's running on-prem. It's a virtual machine. It's in my vSphere environment. Everybody knows and loves it. Being an on-prem infrastructure engineer, you know your job, you do your job, you do it well. But one of the things that you're not going to do is you're not going to write code to do something like cognitive services, right? And what do I mean by cognitive services? Speech recognition, handwriting recognition, OCR, right? Those things that are sort of commodities that other people have written. For example, Azure Cognitive Services, right? Or even something from like GCP. There are services out there that are better that you can just take advantage of and pay an operational expense to, rather than having to invest in that capital cost and having to build that intellectual property for yourself, and not just being able to capitalize on what already exists. Right. So I've got my VM on-prem. I've got a couple of services from Azure that I'm consuming. I got a couple of services from GCP that I'm consuming. Best in brand stuff that I know and has been proven and has user base out there that I don't have to worry about creating and maintaining. So now I've got, just that one application has got a presence on-prem. It's got a presence in 2 cloud providers, and who knows? Maybe it's got other things that are going to bolt onto that in the future. But that small example is already very complex, and you've got different teams of people that are going to be managing that typically, right? You've got a cloud team, you've got a governance team, you've got security. You've got program management. You've got the infrastructure engineers. You've got architects, right? You've got all these silos of teams to just handle that one application. Not just that one application, but they are delivering that as a service for their business. And all of those unique teams are going to have their own tool set. They're going to have their own view into the data to tell them about how this application is performing. To tell them about adoption of the application and utilization levels of different pieces or components of the application. And it gives them differing perspectives about what is actually happening. You've got the FinOps group, the governance group that says you're spending too much. You've got the cloud operations team that says you know, we realize that we're not utilizing this to the best of our ability, but if it goes above this line, we're going to be in big trouble. So we're trying to stay above that line, and we're going to keep it there. And then you've got the on-prem infrastructure engineer who says CPU looks great, memory looks great.
Job done.
What else
Right.
is there? Job done, right? And not knowing that all of these things are coming together, they're interlocked, they all work together, they all do their own piece, and all of these different teams have a different view of it. They all have a different perspective. And what you said earlier really hit home with me. Of you're addressing all of these individual symptoms, and sometimes these teams aren't even going to talk to each other, right?
We've seen that plenty.
Yeah. So hopefully not all businesses are like that, but we've seen that where these silos of teams where they just don't talk to each other at all because that's how they run their business.
Right.
And that's one of the challenges that I see a lot. Differing tool sets, differing perspectives on the data, and none of it automates, right? None of the tool sets that we see automate and fix these problems on their own. It requires a human eyeball to look at the information, to interpret the information, to come up with a decision, and then I go execute on that decision.
And a lot of
check
it's a
and
best
see
guess
that
in a lot of
resolve
ways.
the
Too.
symptom. Did
Right.
it resolve the symptom? Oh no, it didn't. Back through that process again. It's waste.
Right.
It's waste. So
Yep.
I know I've said a lot, Joe. What in that small little example I gave? What's the answer? How do you perceive this to be solved? What's one of the ways that you think that this could be done?
Well, I think first and foremost, right, you would need something that can sort of unify all these perspectives, all these data points, all these data sets, and to be able to do the analysis for us, right? Because like you described, it still requires, sort of traditional models sort of still require a person
Yes.
to sort of make those connections, and they're doing this at scale, or at as big of a scale as a human possibly can,
Yep.
right? So inevitably there's going to be errors when we talk about not automating, right? A lot of that comes down to trust. We can't 100% trust this,
Yes.
so we can't automate it, right? So I guess we would need something that can sort of unify these teams, unify this data, and do the analysis for us, leverage software to make these complex decisions and do
Yes.
them in real time. Because again, optimization it's not a one-time event, right? And
Absolutely. Thank you.
optimization is a lifestyle, right? Kind of
Right.
like running. I don't like running, but I assume it's the same thing.
Right.
Something that you constantly have to do, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, and again, I think this is all great, and I think this is kind of the direction that we're hoping to take these conversations as we continue to have these episodes. I will say for our next episode, I think we're going to maybe dive into Turbo a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe give like a 30,000-foot view, perhaps.
Yep.
What do you think, Craig?
Run a quick demo. Hey, this is Turbo. This is what you can expect to see out of it. These are the pieces. These are the parts. This is why it's valuable. And like you said, just scratch the surface, because throughout the series, we're going to dive into these things in detail. We're going to bring the people that know the most about these things and really give you all the information.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, Greg. This is it'll be exciting. Hey, last thing before we go, to everyone listening, there should be a link where you can post your questions. We're going to try to have a call to action after each one of these episodes. So for this week, please post your questions. If there are situations that you'd like to hear us talk about, if there's situations you want to come on and talk about, if there's specific things about the industry in general that you'd like to hear about, we want to hear it too. So please let us know. As much as I love talking to Greg, hopefully this serves to help others as well. And I think ultimately that's our goal here. So yeah, hey, signing off for our first episode. Good job, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You did a
It's
smash up
awesome.
job yourself.
Yeah, hey, thank you. Well, hey, we're recording this on a Friday, so Greg, have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
And we'll see you on the next one.
All righty, take care.
Bye, guys.